Good morning, Vietnam. Nope, not Vietnam. Good morning, everybody. It's the breakfast scoop this morning. We're doing things a bit different because of rugby duties later on. So we are recording quite early on Sunday today. But yeah, lots of conversations to be had regarding the Currie Cup. 100 minutes of rugby between the Blue Bulls and the Sharks. Sanele Nohamba, Razzle Dazzle, the Cheetahs in Johannesburg. Tabakanye, highlights reel. Oh, what a try from the big prop forward. News making headlines this week. Kitoff, we understand that he'll be out for 6 weeks. He could probably be back around the end of the year tour, or he might miss the rest of this particular season. We might see him next year. The Box squad has been named the team that's traveling to Argentina. Unfortunately, Grant Williams will not be traveling. He copped an injury before on I think last week Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Monet van der Berg will be the guy that replaces him. In 2 weeks' time, we've got the URC kicking off, but plenty of talk this week regarding a merger between the Welsh sides and the English sides. And then we've got New Zealanders blaming the Rugby Australia about the current woes down under. We'll also touch on that as well. And we've got the English women beating New Zealand last night. And also congratulations to the English centre of the Red Roses Centre, Emily, is it Scarrett or Scarrett? How do you pronounce that, you?
Scarrett. Emily Scarrett.
Listen to me. Scarrett earning her 100th cap for the Red Roses last night. And we also want to debate later on about coaching, the gender roles that maybe women can play within the rugby space. Currently, we see it becoming a heavy topic in football, and maybe how would it work, or what are our thoughts regarding this particular topic in the rugby space as well. But yeah, I'm not by myself. I'm with the Razzle Dazzle, the Smeary Mary, Vickers Miranda, Vuyozanga, former Blitzboker. I'm with the gardener, Hugh Griffin, the stats man. I'm with the weatherman, Jade. It's actually terrible conditions here in Prague. We're expecting a flood, apparently, the news. And that's what's happening currently. There's a wee bit of rain. So I don't know how things are in Bloemfontein. Have you recovered from Cape Town? Your voice is back?
My voice is back, bro. My voice is back. Now I'm good. I'm good. We've been weather for us. The Cheetahs won yesterday, but now we're good. So weather's fine. Everything's good.
Interesting. Yeah, gents, plenty to talk about. Vickers, how are things that side in Russia? Quiet weekend or preparing for next week, rugby-wise?
Yeah, quiet weekend. Nothing much to do this side. Just still trying to get the players recovered from the last previous tournament. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Griffin, gardening. How is the weather in England at the moment?
It's gone cold. So we're out of August into September, and it's decided that no, we're going to be cold now. So we've gone from all of our houses are not built to work in the sunshine, in the heat. So in the summer, we're all absolutely dying of heat. And then suddenly it's all gone cold again. So we're all putting away our fans or getting the thick duvets out and trying to cope that way. But we refuse to put the heating on in September. So we're just sitting cold in our houses now.
Yeah, it's in the Netherlands. I think we had single digits on Friday, like 9 degrees, which is very nippy for September as well, right? So I guess the summer is over now. We might as well make peace with the fact that we are heading into very horrible, ridiculous weather conditions. But yeah, let's not waste any time, gentlemen. Let's kick it off with the Currie Cup, obviously. Plenty to chat about what happened yesterday. We'll start off with the Blue Bulls and the Sharks. 100 minutes of rugby. Vickers, first of all, the Sharks were playing with 14 men, but this try business, I mean, I thought if it's a draw, Blue Bulls will go through because they finished higher than the Sharks. They had more points than the Sharks throughout the season. I mean, the Sharks were third in their pool of four, or third or second, I think. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to take, I'm assuming, for the Blue Bulls and the Bulls fans, regardless of what transpired yesterday. I mean, if it's a draw, you would automatically think, okay, who finished top? And also the yellow cards and red cards, or disciplinary aspects. That's how usually competitions are run. What are your thoughts regarding this debacle? Because it's a big talking point within the results from yesterday.
Yeah, look, it's not. Yeah, the people that are talking about it is the people that don't have a clue on what is going on. So before any competition, you obviously get your rules and your and the way of how certain things are going to be done. For example, all those rules usually are handed to coaches, and obviously coaches are very much aware on what is going on. So when it was a draw, they probably on the Currie Cup rule book, it's probably written tries for the game. If they both teams have similar number of tries, then it probably goes down to conversions. And then if both teams have the similar exact same conversions, then it goes down to maybe penalties, and then maybe it goes down to yellow cards and red cards. So there's so many outcomes that they have. Their last outcome, the last one is probably the kicking for poles. So yeah, so I think uh, the rugby public is not aware of such things, and this is why this is based on the people who are running the competition. These are the kind of things that I think we should be tweeting about, in terms of, for example, if the Currie Cup handle the Currie Cup handle could be tweeting this before the game, before the tournament, so that everyone's aware. Because now you're going to have conversations and you're going to have people's opinions, but it doesn't really matter. But in that case, for me, just the whole game going down to 13 men, going down. I actually think they even at 12 at some stage.
Yeah, it went to
So
12 at one
yeah,
point.
yeah. I think, look, you can never take it away. I think the Bulls just lost that game by themselves. You cannot play against 12 men and still be playing one pass rugby. You have to. There's certain ways of doing it, and you know how to break a system down. It's very easy when you, especially the ascendancy that they had in terms of the penalties. They
Yeah.
kept on getting penalties. They were asking for scrums, or they were going deep they were kicking to try and maul, and then they were losing their line out.
Mm.
So there's a whole lot of things that transpired in that game, and I think that the Bulls lost that game themselves.
Yeah,
Like I
no,
said, there's
true.
no way there's no way. And also, why are you taking a scrum? Because you're taking your own advantage away, for example. So there were
Mm.
two backline players were off, and there was one forward, it was off. So if you're scrumming 8 versus 7, your backline is still not. It's going to be 7 versus obviously 5, but your scrum off is still a source. Their scrum off doesn't have to be a source.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that I feel like this one they lost themselves. So yeah,
Yeah.
just on that sense, for me, I think I think it was a good quality game though. I really enjoyed it, and I think credit to the Sharks. They did everything to win the game. They tried everything. I think what stand out just their players, how they fought, especially their older players. They had really fought in that game, and credit to the Sharks.
Yeah. Thanks for that, actually, because I think my next question, then I'll direct it maybe to Hugh, because my next question was going to be the experience that played a major part or major role within this particular game. The Blue Bulls had their star players, URC players, in their lineup, right? And then the Sharks, I mean, Lionel Cronier, smart. He's played plenty of footy, understood what to do percentage wise to keep the Sharks in that particular game. But looking at the Blue Bulls, man, they've got star players, star qualities lineup for this particular game. And they really failed in adjusting to a 13 or 12 man Sharks. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal lineup, and it was a really enjoyable game. It was better. I think the Sharks team in this was better than the Sharks team that we saw in the URC last season, to be honest with you. And I think Plumtree's got to be very, very careful about how he manages all the Springboks coming back at the end of the TRC, because this team, I think this could be a turning point for the Sharks. I really do. The way that they, in the trenches, they fought for each other. They weren't perfect by any means, but they had the look about them of knowing what they wanted to do and what they were trying to do, which they absolutely didn't have last season. For the Bulls, Vuya mentions the scrum. There was one scrum that the Bulls had where it was on the Sharks 5 metre. They drove the Sharks backwards. I think they either drove them off their own ball or they just sent them into reverse gear. But the ball popped out the back of the scrum and they tried to run it. And if they'd have just kept it at the number 8's feet, it's a try. It might even be a penalty try. They go down and lose another man. So crazy head explosion stuff from the Bulls, obviously, with Hussein getting his nose smashed early in the first half. Don't know how much that would have affected him in the whole game. You guys know my thoughts on Hussein generally. So they'll be absolutely kicking themselves, especially allowing Nyakane to score that late on to get the results. I think it was it Bota Chamberlain who missed the kick at the end. Of course, he got signed from the Sharks during the summer. So just a mad game. The Currie Cup has been mad generally, and I'm actually really looking forward to the final. But you're right, from a Bulls point of view, that's pretty much as close as they can get to their first choice team without Moody, Aronsa, and Nohia. And I guess Elric Lowe, of course, not being there. But they don't lose that many players to the Springboks, so I think they'll be very disappointed, especially at home.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, Jade, the likes of the Buthelezis, the likes of Croniers, the likes of Trevor Nyakanis. There were some standout players from the Shark side. I know we talk about the Bulls lineup, but I mean, from the Sharks perspective, they really fought for each other on that field. I mean, 12 men, 13 men. Your thoughts regarding the Sharks' grit to hold the Bulls off for that long period of time?
Yeah, Plumtree, I mean, we criticized him in the beginning of the season. I mean, because you have to look at it as I don't know how we're going to look at it as on this panel, because are we looking at this Currie Cup as a pre-season to go into next season, or are we looking at it as an end-of-season tournament? But I'm looking at it as a season overall in 2024. And, I mean, the criticism he got this whole season, and deserved. I mean, look where they ended up in the URC. They were sometimes the same players they played yesterday struggled in the URC. I mean, put on some shocking performances. And something just changed for them. I don't know what, maybe it was internally, maybe he got the better of the players internally, he got them in the right mindset. And I mean, you saw them winning the Challenge Cup, and then now in the Currie Cup final where they're playing the Lions. I mean, and we all fancy their chances of winning that competition, although the Lions have beat them a few times this season. So I think there must have been a change in mindset somewhere. Maybe he had a big heart-to-heart with a few players, maybe he got a few of the rotten apples out of the team. I'm not so close to that team. I'm not sure if he's done that. But I mean, their mindset changed this 2024 compared to late on in 2023. And I mean, they've had a better performance overall this season. They did have a few hiccups in the Currie Cup. They did have a few surprises here and there. But I mean, if you're looking at that team, there's professional players all over. I mean, there's star guys that can razzle dazzle. I mean, the brothers, the Tuka brothers, we're looking at Jaden Hendricks, Trevor, I mean, his experience around. I mean, Lionel's no slouch as well at Currie Cup level. I mean, he's been a real journeyman of international rugby. He's played all over the place. So I really think that, in terms of that, they've got a good balance between youth and experience in that team, which is promising for the up-and-coming URC season with the signings they did make as well. It's interesting, and I looked at the Currie Cup and I thought this morning, and I would love to hear Vuyo's opinion on this as a coach. And I'd like to see at the end of the season, in terms of injuries, how many injuries will we be getting this season? Because, I mean, there's a few. Look at the Bulls. They loaded their Currie Cup, where normally going into a season, you would look at it as a pre-season. and you would normally just play, a few fringe players here and there, and they would have 60-minute hits, 40 minutes and 60 minutes, and then the odd 80 minutes before their first game of the season. But then coming into the URC, and I'm going dwelling off topic a little bit, but I would love to hear Vuyo's opinion on this. How do you see, with the teams that was named yesterday, and a lot of these guys will be playing in the URC, how do you see the injuries, and how do you as a coach, how would you prep, for this long, grueling season that you can go into? And I really think that at the end of the season, I want to compare the injuries, compared to the previous seasons, especially in the URC.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so if you looked at the Currie Cup at the start of the Currie Cup, they didn't use any URC players, both teams, Sharks and the Bulls and even the Lions. So none of the teams used their basically their URC team. They all used their fringe players that needed game time. So I in my mind, in that sense, I thought, okay, the guys were given off. They were having a off time, and then they got back, and then they started preseason, and then we saw this in the last two rounds of the Currie Cup where the Sharks picked sort of their star players. The Bulls did the same. That's when we were even questioning because Mzwakhe Nkosi was removed and Cash van Rooyen came in as a head coach all of a sudden because obviously the URC players were back, and then the obviously they played, which then if you look at it in terms of the periodization of the contact when you need your players to be to start a competition, I would have assumed that. So in how we do it, we talk about 14 days. We talk about 14-day no contact before the start of the competition. So this weekend would have been the last weekend that those URC players must play before their first game. But looking at how things have transpired in terms of going into a final, no one wants to throw a final away. No one wants to give a final. So you'll see, see probably the same similar starting lineups from both teams. I mean, Lions are using their URC players, so the Sharks will probably also select their URC players. And then, then after that, the unfortunate part in this one, Jade, is that if you pick up a muscle injury, there's no way you can recover before your first game of the URC. So that's where it puts you back. Other than that, I think the guys did get some time off, and I think this was probably used. These last games were probably used as a contact prep for the URC.
So, Vuyo, just before Scoop jumps in there, so do you expect the South African teams to come out of the blocks firing in the URC? Because obviously they had better preparation going to the URC than teams like maybe Leinster and Ulster and all of those guys, because they play more competitive games and the games at high intensity than those guys that was playing in preseason. Do you think South African teams should come out firing in the URC?
100% spot on. 100%, bro. I think the URC. If I was the South African URC teams, I would almost, for the first 2 or 3 games, I would actually almost select all my Currie Cup players, your Jorenzo Juries, your Lionel Croniers, because they've been playing rugby, and then sort of towards mid-October, towards November, you start getting your main players back in the mix, because now they would have been having maybe playing off the bench here and there, and now they could be ready. So you're 100% spot on. I think the South African teams will definitely start the competition better, but now it's going to be a question of what is it that they're going to do on the field in terms of contact. They're ready. In terms of sharpness, they are ready. In terms of just that rugby feel, they are ready, because they've been playing. I mean, the Sharks played the Bulls in the last round, so they've played each other twice. So meaning that actually they should be in a better position going into the start of the URC.
Yes, fantastic, because I then want to balance it off by checking up with you up north if the northern sides are also starting to have a few hit outs, or they still preseason mode, not really getting a lot of headouts in terms of like preseason games currently to kind of get them warmed up or ready for the kickoff of the URC. How are things over there in terms of preparation for the URC? We understand Currie Cup is preparing the South African teams quite well, and the build-up is looking good from what Vuyo and Jade have just alluded to and spoken about now. But how are things up there in the north in terms of preparation for the URC?
Yeah, so we have had some warm-up games or pre-season games. Most teams have played 3 pre-season games. It's nowhere near the Currie Cup in terms of intensity, in terms of the preparation. You know, the Currie Cup is a competitive tournament that's being, you know, the players who are in it, that's especially earlier on in the tournament before the URC players came back in, that's their thing. That's the top of their pyramid for them. Whereas the URC teams in the north, their pre-seasons, what we're seeing is you see mix and match teams. You see a lot of academy kids getting a run out. So the Scarlets, for example, they've played 3 pre-season games, but 2 proper ones. They will play the first liners for 50 minutes and then bring on the academy kids around 50 minutes and play the last half an hour with an academy team on the pitch with, 15 full replacements on the bench. So it's not anything like the Currie Cup, not anything like it at all. So the preparation is nowhere near. The last season was probably even worse because last season the Welsh regions just played against each other, against academy teams, and that was basically not a pre-season. This season there's been a lot of cross-border games between English, French, Italian, Welsh sides, and all the things like that. So it's been better, but it's nowhere near the Currie Cup. It's not comparable. But the one thing I will say is that the South African sides have had their first round of the URC delayed because of the clash with the end of the Currie Cup. So the URC for the northern side starts next weekend. I think the South African side doesn't start till the weekend after. And I think it starts with a round of derbies in South Africa as well. So, maybe that will affect how things run for them. But I would say I definitely agree that the South Africans are better prepared.
Fair. Vickers?
No, I just wanted to also add on what Hugh was talking about because when I was with the Kings, the teams that used to come to South Africa first, which was when I was there in 2019, it was Ulster, Cardiff. Who else was it again? But it was sort of Munster. It was sort of top teams that came, and the Kings pushed them. We pushed them to those last minute wins because we were better prepared. In that case, but like what you're saying now, Hugh, is that if they have done this with the interplays with other obviously countries, and then also the fact that they will be playing their second or third game by the time that they play the South African teams, so maybe that could be a game changer for them. Yep.
No, fair enough. Hugh, your favorite club? No, actually, Blue Bulls were your favorite South African team. But I think one of your favorite players, Nohamba, the razzle dazzler with the Lions, the game changer in last night's game between the Lions and the Cheetahs. I mean, your overall view of what transpired there with the Cheetahs and the Lions?
Yeah, I haven't seen much of it. I've only seen the clips that have gone around on Twitter, but I did see that Nohamba came on with the Lions either only just ahead or slightly behind, and Nohamba scored a penalty, scored a try, scored a conversion, I think set up another one as well. So URC Player of the Year for a reason. It's crazy. Like, he would be starting for most, probably 4 out of the Six Nations teams, I think Nohamba would be, and he's not even close to playing for the Springboks. And so it just a feel good factor for the Lions, arguably against weaker opposition in the Cheetahs. No disrespect, but we saw that the Sharks and the Bulls were 2 fully loaded URC sides. So it's exciting. They've got the home advantage now for playing the Sharks. It would be great to see a bit of feel good factor for the Lions. Some people are tipping them to make the URC playoffs this season. I just think their squad is a bit thin for that, but I'll be delighted to see if they do well.
No, fair enough. I mean, Jade, Vic has mentioned something quite interesting earlier on in this chat about the change of guard or the change of coaches as we moved into the playoffs. Nkosi obviously making way for, what's this guy's name now? Cash van Rooyen. But obviously they won. But the Blue Bulls, did they do the same? Did Piwe now make way for Jake? Obviously in that semi-final, because the Blue Bulls were going on well in during the competition, right? Looking good until maybe the last week or two, where things were not really gelling, or maybe the players were already in semi-final mode. You know, when players think ahead of themselves, obviously those things obviously have an effect, etc. But I mean, looking at the Lions, I know Asanathi Ntlabaganye scored a magnificent try, and you love this player. But looking at those dynamics, does it actually change, I don't know, players' perception, or does it change players' attitudes? Because I think the Sharks have had Plumtree throughout the whole season, but I know previous year they had Joey as part of their coaching staff for the Currie Cup element. But I mean, those dynamics, do they change the mood within the space of the team itself? And then also then looking at how the Lions performed against the Cheetahs, because the Cheetahs have been performing quite well at Currie Cup level. And I'm sure Bloemfontein is not very Brandervein all over the streets this past weekend.
Well, no way. No, man. The only thing that you can really, look at when it comes to like the Bulls and the Lions and the Sharks, I mean, obviously you have a team and you have a squad that you as the head coach is going to use for the season. And I mean, obviously they've been talking out of one mouth, like at the Bulls, for example, they wouldn't dwell away from what Jake's big and overall game plan was for them. So it's not like, they're going and playing. How can I put it? Maybe, the Currie Cup coach played there. Remember when Harry Falloon came with Percy Montgomery and didn't kick the ball and, changing the game completely? It's not like that. They still have one plan and, talk out of one mindset, with Jake being the director of rugby there. And at the Lions as well, they still stick to that plan, and the overall game plan. So I don't think in terms of that, there's been so much of a change because, I mean, obviously Jake has also been hands-on with this Currie Cup team as well. So I don't think so much. I think with the Sharks, they just stuck with Plumtree. So I think that was just a choice they made. But no, I don't think, it's a different voices and different games, different game plans. It's not like, for example, the MPC, for example, where, Crusaders are split into Tasman and Canterbury. That you can say is different voices, but not in South Africa, where the franchise teams stay more or less the same at Currie Cup level. And, those guys who have been playing at Currie Cup in the beginning of the season has been training with the URC team as well. So I don't think, it's that has been that change. In terms of the Cheetahs, for me, I don't know. I think the Cheetahs have gone a little bit backwards this year. I think because of, the players that they lost quite a lot of players, overseas, and a few guys went to the Lions and a few guys went to the Bulls. And so I think for them, it's basically they're building from a successful, similar Varsity Cup team that they had, trying to get place in. It's very difficult for the Cheetahs in the space they're in now. The Currie Cup and the Challenge Cup is the two competitions really focusing. So I feel for them, as in they need to get involved in another competition somehow, where they're playing rugby week in, week out, and not every third week or every fourth week, and then you go into the Currie Cup season as well. So it's difficult. And I mean, what players are attracted, into joining the Cheetahs when they're not having this, when they don't have a real tournament that they're playing in, like when the Bulls and the Sharks and the Lions and Storms are playing in the URC. So for them, it's difficult, to get that player attraction at the moment and to keep their players. That's always been a problem with the Cheetahs, was to keep players and their player retention. But as now, it's more of a problem. So I really feel for Saki and for Frans Steyn and those guys. They keeping their players and keeping their star players. But they have a solid enough group to work with, from this Varsity Cup success that the Shimlas had. So, they can take it from there, but I mean, it's difficult. We really need to get them into some form of competition, whether it's up north or south, but the Cheetahs need to get into a franchise competition and then
Super Rugby.
I would love it, bro. I would love it. For me, that would be the best because then I get a few guys coming back to Bloemfontein and watching. Yeah, so I would love that. But yeah, I understand it's difficult for them at the moment. You know, they don't really have a stable home in the competition at the moment.
Scrumming Flower will definitely enjoy Cheetahs and the Kings taking part in Super Rugby Pacific, or what should we call this one? Super Rugby Indian Ocean. Anyway, Vickers, you wanted to jump in there.
No, I just wanted to clear out just a few things on the coaches. Um, so Western Province, Dobbo took the Currie Cup team. With the Sharks, it was JP Peterson who was the head coach, and Vovo was the backs, I think. Bulls was Piwe and Kennedy Timber. They were running the Currie Cup team, and Lions was Mzwake, and I'm not sure who was supporting Mzwake. So it's only they only for the Sharks they only changed it in the last 2 weekends, I think, and then Plumtree he took over. Obviously, Dobbo was always the coach, so there was no change. The Bulls didn't do any changes. They didn't mention any changes on their side. And then Lions, obviously, Cash changed. I think Cash changed for 1 weekend or 2 weekends, if I'm not mistaken. And then yesterday's game, it was Mzwake again in the box. So I think when we look at these kind of changes that happen like this, I don't think it affects the team too much because the coaches do sit around the table to discuss the plan for the week and obviously on presenting to the team for that week. The only thing that it normally obviously changes is just the person that gets interviewed as a head coach, the press conference, if you could call it like that. So yeah, I think for me, if you're going to use the Currie Cup as your way of developing or developing depth within your squad, then I think you should be also doing the same for your coaches. And what better way to do it when to see how your older players are responding to your younger coaches, if I can say.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Moving on, but guys, I know some of you probably wanted to chime in as our listeners on what you thought of your teams. Ndabez into the Blue Bulls, Wanda the Sharks, but feel free to chime in as we go along. But now we're gonna move back to Sia Kolisi back at the Sharks. Hugh, there's no more French rugby. There's no more croissant. He's back in South Africa for good now. And his main focus, as I've read in the news, was him wanting to play for the Springboks and be the captain of the Springboks. I mean, this current, what is it? Not form. This current way of players wanting to leave because French top 14 teams have way too much power, if for lack of a better word, in terms of controlling where players go. For example, if we look at the tier 1 or tier 2 nations like your Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, their players don't get released as well as your tier 1 nations like your Springboks. Australia are finding it difficult as we speak. But I mean, at some point, if we are really going to focus on national sides, do French teams need a bit of flexibility within this regard, or it's highly impossible to get players released in French top 14, especially if you're a tier 2 nation?
Yeah, for tier 2 nations, it's a real struggle. Like in Rugby Europe last season, there was players like Portuguese players and Georgian players who requested to their national sides, please don't pick me for this game because I need to play for my club side. And, the most extreme case that I can think of is Lee Halfpenny got sacked by Toulon for being picked for the British and Irish Lions. So it's it's a struggle. These French teams pay a lot of money for these players, and in return, they want full control over them. Now, the issue is that if you're going to schedule international test matches outside of the release window, they're under no obligation to release these players, and so they opt not to, and that's the end of the story. To be honest, it's the choice that the player's got to make. Unfortunately, if you're going to move to France, you've basically got to concede your test career. That's basically how it goes. That's why Toulon were so successful 10 years ago, was because they had likes of Matt Gitto, Johnny Wilkinson, Martin Nonu, who had ended their test careers to play in France, and that was the deal that they'd made. That's one of the things that Racing have gotten so wrong, is that they keep signing on big money players who are still playing test rugby, which means their availability is limited. So unfortunately, this is the deal that you make when you move to France, is that your club career is going to take precedence over your international career. If you want to prioritize your international career, the best thing you can do is play in your home country.
Damn. But now the rand cannot compete with the euro or the yen in Japan. Vickers, jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on what you asked, Hugh. So I think like Hugh mentioned, they're paying a big money for these players. So if you're going to play test rugby outside international window, then they're losing money, because then they can't use their player. So with World Rugby, if it's an international window, every player, every club or province is forced to release the players 27 days before competition. Then, which means you can actually have a month with your squad, if it's a month before your competition. So even same as South Africa or New Zealand, if they decided we don't want a relationship with our provinces, they could request those players to come earlier to prepare for inbound tour or whatever. But obviously, they you have to keep that relationship. And then with with what Hugh was talking about, the problems that with the French teams is that when you sign your contract, it's probably in your contract that we will not release you if you want to play outside the international window. And then also probably also another thing is that that person that's signing that contract doesn't think of the effect that it will have once the time comes, and that's why they fired Lee Halfpenny. Yeah, so I think for me it's like you mentioned, it's perfect. If you want to end a playing career, move to France. But if you want to still continue playing for your country, I think it's a no-brainer. Don't go there.
Japan, because I think he would prefer going to Japan because, first of all, the contact or the body is not really exerted into too much physicality. If you'd go to Japan, there's still also a good break between the international window. I mean, they're around. I think their season ends around April, if I'm not mistaken, or just before that. So you're available for the inbound tour, and then you still have the end of the year tour. I mean, the season is only just starting in Japan, so you can miss maybe a month and then go back to Japan for the December period and January and February, etc. So I think the Japan season is well adjusted and it can compete financially with the French. But obviously it's not as competitive, but it's starting to build into a competitive competition in League One. Maybe also the time element regarding obviously when games kick off might be an issue for a lot of countries that are based in Africa, Europe, like the UK, and maybe France, Netherlands, Germany area. But it's not that bad. I mean, 6 a.m. kickoff is not too bad, and 11 a.m. kickoff is not too bad either. Because I mean, looking at how we watched all the Rugby World Cup games during 2019, so nobody had issues in opening up their first bottle of Brandewijn at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. But just going forward in terms of looking at how things could transpire in that sense. Hugh,
Yeah, just to say that Japan is a great option for South African and Kiwi players and Australians, but Liam Williams moved there this season and he had to declare himself unavailable for the Six Nations. So the Japan season does clash with the Six Nations, so it's not a great option for Northern Hemisphere players because it does clash with our season. And it's obviously a big travel difference as well, which makes you can't commute from Japan to Wales. It's just ridiculous. So the Japanese teams have very strict rules about how many capped foreign internationals they can have. They can only have 3 in their squad. So if you're one of those 3, they're not releasing you to go to play for your country because they've wasted a ton of money on you, so much money on you. Like you said, the money in Japan is ridiculous. So it's a great option for South Africans because it doesn't clash with Springbok games, but it's a non-goer for Northern Hemisphere players. But to be fair, pretty much the only 2 Northern Hemisphere countries who allow their players to play abroad are Wales and Italy. So it's not much of a consideration.
Fair enough. Good point there, Hugh.
And Scotland as well, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's teams that are almost borderline tier 2 nations, so it's pretty okay by the sound of things. I'm kidding. Jade, I hear you guys down under there in New Zealand are blaming Australians for your current woeful, depressing results. What's happening?
What result was woeful and depressing? Losing by 1 try against the best Springbok team in all time, home and away. I mean, not home and away, at Ellis Park in Cape Town. Guys need to take a chill pill, man. Guys need to take a chill pill and realize that, Rome wasn't built in a day. But
You
now,
were right. You were right there, home and away. Johannesburg is the home for Springboks. Cape Town is the home for the All Blacks.
No, man, listen, guys. I mean, we all need to understand that Australia rugby they're struggling at the moment. And I mean, just look at their last result against Argentina. And watch me say this next week, they actually have a blinding. They just look up again and then, just come out to the blocks fighting. But I mean, they're struggling with them. I mean, they have about 30 players to choose from, in Australia that's currently, you can say, it's good at franchise level. And then you're looking at the rest of the players. I would say, would struggle to make a few NPC teams. I think they're not that good. But then you also look at the likes of Tate Edmund and how they're clocking up in the NPC as well. They're doing well. But it's really, I think Australia at the moment is struggling. I mean, they even changed the Super Rugby format. And I mean, let's not beat around the bush. The way they changed that format was to allow for an Australian team, like the Brumbies would, was probably because they play a lot of derbies, end up in the top 3, and allow them still, if they lose in the quarterfinals, they still go through as the highest ranked team, to the next round or so. So I think for me, Australia at the moment, their grassroots is a mess. They're not where they were a few years ago. I mean, Coming Fly put up a picture a few weeks ago, in the week, about Chris Latham. And I mean, a lot of guys don't just realize how good Australian rugby was in the 90s and early 2000s. So for them to get back to that is a big, big challenge because, I mean, they're competing against League and AFL. We have mega bucks. I mean, your league salaries is massive. AFL popularity is massive in Australia. So it's difficult. It's really difficult. For New Zealand at the moment, as soon as they start to lose and All Blacks not doing well and being as, dominant as they were, they will always fall back and say, they're playing South Africans or not playing South Africans because the Africans left Super Rugby, it's because how weak Australia is, etc. But look at the way Fiji performed, since they joined Super Rugby. I mean, they've done much better. So you can look at it in that aspect as well. Honestly, I'm not going to blame Australia for this. There's a few decisions and there was a few board decisions that New Zealand made that caused them, to take a slip and to take a top in form. I mean, your Foster appointments and there's a few other allowing guys to go overseas, that's still in their prime, like Mwanga and Fraziel and those guys. You needed to keep on to those guys. But yeah, for me, I can't blame Australia because, I mean, they're not going to get better overnight. They're going to take some time. New Zealand rugby at the moment, they just need to work with what they have and try to improve. You can't point and blame X, Y, and Z. You can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I even saw some article. I think it was from the Sydney Herald, if I'm not mistaken. Someone was just ripping into the Tongan Thor, Tenelai Tupo, about how much money he's earning, but we really haven't seen his worth in the past 2 seasons. As big as a player he is, as strong as a player he is, he could be one of the best tight head props in the world. But we're not getting out. We're not getting that out of him in the Wallaby jersey or even at provincial or franchise level. I mean, the article was just based on one player and looking at obviously the current situation with Joe Schmidt and Australia copping 60 points in Argentina. And I think it was Tupo's first game or second game back after obviously not being available for those first 2 rounds against the Springboks. But yeah, just to rip into one player, and I think he earned, and they put out his salary, rough amount of about I think $1 million Australian dollars, just over $1 million Australian dollars per annum, and obviously how this money is being wasted
That's
on players.
ridiculous. That's a stupidly massive amount of money. Like, what's the exchange rate? I'm going to look it up.
Check it out in the meantime.
Yeah, but remember, Scoop, it was Daniela Tupou, and with him it's a little bit different because he's one of the guys that can't go to league. So league can really not target him because there's no space for him, in league. So obviously he was on the verge of joining Leinster, and I think they must have just turned his head, and that's why he joined the Waratahs. So I think that's why they're so much emotionally invested in this guy. And I mean, they snatched this guy from. This guy he went to school in New Zealand. He was a part of the setup there, and then he decided to play his rugby in Australia. They gave him a big junior contract as well. So I think in terms of the investment and how much money they put into Tanela Tupou, that's quite a lot. And in terms of the returns they're getting, I mean, every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, he has a niggle. He's not really been, the force that we expected him to be because, I mean, we thought this guy would be massive. We thought this guy would be the next big thing. The guy would make everybody that want to play prop. You understand?
Yeah.
That's what he was supposed to be. But unfortunately, it never worked out for him so far. So I think that's where the frustration with him comes in.
No, fair enough. But I mean, to just rip into one, I think he's played one test match throughout the season. I understand the niggles, right? But at the same time, I mean, it's a whole team effort at this point for Australia because they're trying to rebuild a group of players. I mean, what's his name? The other New Zealand coach now. Rennie. I mean, Rennie built a group. He was working well with the group. He did some cultural stuff. Like he went in deep with that Australian group that he had. But with Schmidt, he's almost kind of doing a similar thing now at this point to rebuild. And obviously, results are important. International rugby. Don't get me wrong. The Welsh are also basically up in arms with Warren Gatland. They know what he's capable of, but at the same time, results are the main thing, right? At international rugby, you can't be copying 3 to 4 losses in back to back. So yeah, I just feel it's unfair on Tupou to be the one guy that they point out because at this point in time, Australia's lacking a number 10 as well, right? A very solid international number 9, a solid number 4 or 5 lock at this point. I think I mentioned that in the WhatsApp group as well. A good number 8. And also, man, maybe good one or two good back 3. Keep people that are going to be game changers. And I think the injury to Kurtley Beale before the season started is also one of the things that hampered maybe what Joe Schmidt had attended or planned for this particular season. But yeah, it's just one of those things that was unfair.
Just on that, you mentioned those guys there. I mean, you mentioned a few of them. I mean, number 8, obviously Rob Valentini is a number 8, but he's playing 6 because they don't have a good number 6 because the number 6 is playing lock. So you understand, you see the trend where they're going to. So they actually must have hard men up front. But I mean, in the back line, I mean, you're looking at what happened. They let Easy go the center from the Tars. What's his name? He signed for Harlequins, I think. Then they let the best backline player join the Roosters in Mark Nawantawasi. They let him go. Carter Gordon's gone as well. There's so many guys that's left. Sometimes they don't even choose Len Ikitau, who is arguably one of the best players. So for me, there's deep lying issues, and I fully agree with you. I mean, we say, yeah, Australians will say, yes, we need a good number 10. Well, there's a number 10 playing in the NPC, in Dane Edmund that's doing well. There's Carter Gordon that's playing elite that's doing well. There's a backline player in Mark Nawuntawase who's doing well. We just let a few centers from the Waratahs leave and play abroad. So you need to really, turn these guys' heads, and say, listen, we need you to stay in Australia. And there's a few guys in that under 20 setup as well that, they didn't have a bad under 20 team this year, but let's just keep an eye on them, how long they're going to stay in union before they go to league or go and play overseas as well, play in Japan. So there's big problems in Australian rugby. I think, it's not an easy job for Herbert and Phil Ward at the moment.
Fair
Can
enough.
I just say, Tupou, I've just worked it out. I've looked at how many minutes he plays. If he doesn't play another minute this season, then in 2024, he will have been paid 1,490 Australian dollars per minute on the pitch.
Money, 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 money. Vickers, jump in there.
No, I just wanted to comment on something that I heard. Like I was listening to, I think it was a couple of years ago. It was a while ago, and the one thing that I think it's the ex winger, Campisi, he said when Australia was successful, there were only 3 Super Rugby teams. It was Waratahs, Brumbies, and Reds, I think. And he said he feels that they should go back to that, and because they must go back to that, it's because the 3 teams that they will have will be more stronger than having 5 unions or 4 unions that are spread out with all the players. So the players will all focus on the small, on obviously on the 3 teams. So now that brings another question: is that in New Zealand you get 5 rugby unions, the franchise unions, but then when NPC starts, all of those players go play back to their club, back to their club or regional clubs. I don't know if Australia has the same. I think I don't know if they do their own Currie Cup sort of, or their own NPC. I don't know if they have it. If
There's
they have it, I would love
Shield,
to see how.
I think, in
Shield.
Sydney there's the Shoot Shield, but it's not a national competition. I think it's just a Sydney thing.
It's just a Sydney, you see. So I would love to see something like that, like to understand if they do have, because if we are trying to grow the game, then you should be competing in terms of game wise with the other sports, because I'm pretty sure their school system in terms of rugby against each other, that's massive. I'm sure those other sports are putting in a massive time on that. And yeah, so it's for me, I think that those are the kind of things that they would have to look at if they want to really change. I remember in Germany when I was there, the school, if you were playing rugby in school, you were playing 2 games a year because there's not enough numbers. There's not enough. And I said to them, guys, and you want a strong under 20 system. How are you going to get those players? Because you can't play in your whole school career. You can't play 4 games or 5 games. What kind of rugby is that? So for me, the most important is for them to go back to their school, to their school system, and build their school system, and also cancel out these many teams in Super Rugby. I think if they can have go back to those 3 that they had before, I think they'll be more competitive.
Yep. Jade?
Yeah, so to add on to that, and for your spot on there, I think 3 Australian teams will work perfectly. The Rebels has now gone, so they've got 4. But people always say, "Ooh, Australia too bad, done bad." We don't like the arrogance, it's Aussies, etc., etc. So why should we care? Do you know how much of an influence in terms of financial backing, in terms of social media, in terms of media watching, in terms of television viewership, Australia has on global sport? Do you know how mad of a sport nation they are? And the less interest they become in rugby, soon you will see, especially the championship, will suffer in that country, because Australia is a big market in terms of sport. the way they market the sport, if you look at the way they do it with AFL, league, cricket, massive. Even with sevens, we will say, the way they picked up sevens. Look at the traction the women's sevens team get compared to other sports. They get more traction than anything, not because of looks or anything, but because of, the way they're playing and the performances. So we really need to keep a close eye on this, Australia, because that's a big breaker in terms of getting rugby to the next level, especially if we're looking at hitting markets like the US, with the upcoming World Cup and the next World Cup's in Australia as well. So we're going to need, Australia to front up and to have a good team, because imagine going to the 2027 World Cup with a Wallaby team that's ranked 11th or 12th, no interest from the public. I mean, wouldn't be really a good World Cup to go and watch. So, but we really need Australia, to be competitive against the Lions next year, to be competitive in the Bledisloe, to try and challenge the Box Hero there. And then you'll see the overall influence that has on the game, on the rugby.
Jade, just before you jump in the scoop, and it's a massive country, guys. It's a massive country. So in terms of the land, they have it. Now they just need to come up with a model to make sure that they're getting more rugby players.
Yeah, all right. Enough with Australia. Down under. Okay, now looking at the Springboks, forced to make a change, Vickers. Grant Williams, unfortunately, you loved this player. You wanted to see more of him, I think, against the All Black series. But now he's forced out of the squad because of an injury. And Baby Faf, Monet van der Berg, you were not so impressed in Perth against Australia, but he gets another lifeline to be in the Springbok setup, and I'm assuming he probably starts against Argentina. Your thoughts on regarding the squad that's traveling to Argentina, first of all, and then secondly, the injury of Grant Williams, how much of an impact that is?
Yeah, so I think if you look at Grant Williams, he was coming on nicely. I think we all agreed in the space where he was coming off the bench in a couple of games and he was starting to build quite a nice momentum for himself. And he started the one New Zealand game, and I thought he didn't do too badly. I thought he was pretty decent in that game. So for me, it's so unfortunate for the player. But again, he's been with the squad now for the last 4 games. So I think it's probably going to be one of those where if he is fit if he could be fit for the second test in Bombela, they'll probably be selecting him. Yeah, on Monet, yes, I was not impressed. I think yes, he's getting another chance, which is obviously any very good for any sportsman. So for me, I'm not too fussed about that. I think it's just will he start? I don't think so. I think maybe Jaden might start, or he's just gone there for cover, because I think Kobus is still with him. Is still with the squad. So yeah, I don't know. So, but I think look at. We discussed it. It was so funny that we discussed the same issue in our last space about Noamba and the cover and Herschel Yankees, Papier. It's obvious that obviously the coaching staff have decided on Monet, and I don't know. Let's maybe the more time he gets, he'll get better. But I'm still saying that I would go and look at a guy like Noamba.
Yeah, I was literally about to ask you, actually, if you were the coach currently, then would you select Monet van der Berg, or would you have selected Nohamba, but then Nohamba is your first choice?
I would have, why I would select Nohamba Scoop is he is quick. He's got one of the best agility. In fact, probably similar to Chesney Colby, and playing behind a forward pack like South Africa. Oh my gosh, he could be devastating.
Fair. Hugh?
He's a player, Nohamba. If he moved to France, he would look amazing in that league. He would be perfect for it. He can play 9-10. That's a very French thing. And like you said, behind the packs, if he played for someone like Stade Francais or something like that, he'd be dressed in neon pink as well, which I'd love to see. But I just think that would be a great fit. Not that I want him to leave the Lions. I want him to stay at the Lions. I want the Lions to be great. I want to see him playing in the URC. But I think if I was Nohamba's agent, I'd be ringing around the top French clubs.
Cheapest. Early days. Jade, are you listening to that? Kicking off at 11 p.m. next week, Saturday. Pumas or Argentina? coming from a massive win against Australia. But we know, we've said it in this pod many a times. Argentina, one weekend, they look like world beaters. The following weekend, they look sloppy, they look disinterested, and they don't look like a formidable team. What team can we expect next week from Argentina, Jade? I mean, honestly, from a rugby perspective, the inconsistencies, winning by 60 against all odds because the week before they lost by 1 point in horrible conditions against Australia. And then they changed things up. And also they were down by 20 points, 17 points in the first half. And they changed things up in the second test and put 40 plus points or 50 plus points against Australia. Next weekend, what can we expect from Argentina?
So, Argentina will be perfect and really typical Argentina for them to get blown away next week against the Boks for the weekend Boks team, and then to beat the Boks in Bombela when the Boks play the strongest team, because that would sum up Argentina 100%. But I mean, I think they've changed a little bit. I think they're a little bit more consistent. I think they've got a core group of players who or have been together for some time. I mean, you look at that loose trio, as what they do with Kramer. If they're going to play him at lock, I think he's not as effective as he is at loose forward. I don't think that Scrum has the tools to match the Boks. I think they still struggle there. Very very uncharacteristic for Argentina not to have the strongest Scrum. They've always been known for their props all the years. So I think, but with Montoya, with Montera, Gonzalez, all of those guys, you know what to expect from them. And also was the center that's playing for Toulouse, Chocobares, and the fullback from Toulon. I mean, they've got some real quality in the backline as well. So for me, I think under Contemporaneous, they look a little bit more organized. You saw them against Australia in the second half when they threw the ball around and they got, Messi and it got open. What they can do they can tear you apart. So I think they fancy the chances against the Boks next week. But then, like I said, Argentina, typical Argentina would be to lose next week against the Boks, against a weakened team, and then beat the Boks in South Africa when the Boks play the strongest team, because that is Argentina. They tend to play better away from home than at home, But I think they've got a sniff. They've got a sniff that, okay, they can end above New Zealand in the championship. There's still an outside mathematical chance for them to win it. They've got a sniff, so they got something to play for. But yeah, they're very unpredictable.
One thing about Argentina, don't talk them up at all. Once you start talking them up, it's almost like Fiji. Once you start talking Fiji up, they disappoint you. Argentina, when you start talking them up, they disappoint you. You looking at that Springbok lineup and looking at the squad they've taken, obviously Thomas du Toit, Vincent Koch, Oxenche in the front row with Steenkamp as well. But they've taken, hooker is the one for me because they've taken only 2 hookers. So Johan Grobler and Malcolm Marx. So which means if there's any injuries up there could be problems, but Marco van Staden is there, so he can double up in terms of utility. But I mean, at lock, you've got Itzabeth, Salman Morat would be nice to start. But looking at the Springboks form and continuity, momentum, unbeaten run for the remainder of the season, they've got a series, 2 games against Argentina, home and away first and then coming back. Do you see them beating Argentina twice, home and away, first of all? And what do you make of this current form of the Springboks?
Well, the form speaks for itself. I think they'll be gutted that Frawley drop goal went over, because I think the Springboks would love to be sitting here in December with an unbeaten year. But they can't take Argentina lightly. The Argentinian back row with the Kremer and the guys the guys I've already mentioned, and their backline as well that Jade already mentioned as well, with their world-class backs. They can't just put a B team out. But I think the luxurious place that the Springboks are in at the moment is because they brought these new players in, that the players that they are now bringing in as rotation are very settled. So if you look at their second choice centre is Lekan Yoam, their second choice winger is Makazole Mapimpi. You could argue that Willie LaRue isn't first choice fullback anymore. I don't know if I'd absolutely say that, but there's an argument for that. And then, in the forwards as well, you've got that strength and depth there of the guys who've been rotated out. So I think that cohesion and that stability should still be there, even when they choose to rotate the team, which is a fantastic situation that Razzie and the coaches have managed to engineer there. So there's a lot of credit to them. I just hope that the narrative, I hope we're not talking about Manny Leboc's place kicking come the end of the game. I think that would be really sad. It would be good if there was someone else in the team who could take it over from him, but unfortunately not at the moment. So do I see them? I definitely see them beating Argentina twice. It's absolutely doable. I think, like the guys mentioned, if it becomes a scrum-heavy game, they'll have a massive opportunity. They don't want a loose game. They don't want a game with a lot of transitions because Argentina can absolutely rip you apart. But I think we know what we're going to get from the box. The question is what we're going to get from Argentina. And at the moment, it's just not predictable. You have no idea what you're going to get from them.
Fair enough there. Vickers, your starting lineup, because Rassi last week spoke about, or 2 weeks back, he spoke about the Argentinian squad or the team.
Scoop, before we go into starting lineup, I have something regarding Kitsov, regarding Steven Kitsov. Vuyo, I want you to come in here. Do you think, or Steven Kitsov is picking up a lot of niggles now? Do you think we've seen it as well with Owen Franks, similar to Kitsov, age of 2021 international rugby, playing right through, flawless career, not really injuries, etc., etc. But do you think that maybe with Kitsov and the amount of minutes he's played also for the Stormers, playing, I think it was 19 when he's 20 when he started playing Currie Cup Super Rugby. Do you think that's catching up to him now? And that's why he's getting so many niggles. Do you think that maybe, his body is starting to, I wouldn't say cave in, but he's struggling now with his body? Because we've seen it with Owen Franks. We've seen it with him. We've seen it with a few other props as well. Do you think with a guy like Kitsov, maybe, playing in the front row at that young age, maybe his body is catching up to him now, and that's why he's getting so many injuries at the moment? What do you think of that, Vuyo?
I think it's too early to tell, mate. I think it's too early to make that something to look at. I think what's happening with Kitsov is probably the intensity, the intensity part in terms of trainings. I think with different coaches, with different SNCs, you probably do you train differently. So at the moment, as far as I know, I mean, Hugh can probably correct me on this one. He didn't play quite a lot of games for Ulster. He was always out and not playing. So that does put a player back in terms of the intensity of the game, in terms of what's needed. And also the injuries that he had, I think, could have restricted him from continuing like his scrum conditioning. So at the moment, I think for him, it's just maybe to sit him out for some time and just get his body back into position, and maybe then instead of putting him back onto the field, go back to controlled scrum conditioning and get him to doing scrum conditioning for a year or so, for a month or so that you can get him back into a good shape. I think it's too early to say that, Jade, but once you pick up something like that, you're always going to have problems. And with him now, that neck issue, it's always going to become an issue if he doesn't take some time and just rebuild his body again.
Yeah. I'm looking at Dan Cole from England. He's 37 years old and is still playing international rugby. Steven Kitsov, 32 years old. And yeah, the niggles maybe, I don't know, maybe it was the time spent overseas with him and adjusting, and also maybe trying to push hard once he came back to South Africa to represent the Springboks again. Maybe that those kind of pressures are adding or piling up to the stress, and obviously then you can easily pick up an injury here and there. But I think Kitsov still has a long career ahead of him, maybe another 3 to 4 years, to then maybe we can start talking about, okay, if the injuries are persistent or consistent, then maybe he can probably think about, okay, maybe it might be time to retire. But at 32 years old, I mean, it's your prime time, right, as a prop. Those years, your late 20s, early 30s, or mid 30s, those are like your prime years playing as a either loose head or a tight head prop in where rugby is concerned. Yeah, and
Yes, also Scoop. Another thing would be, in South Africa, a lot of our forwards coaches, our scrum coaches, believe in live scrumming. I mean, in a week, those guys are probably having at least about 25, 30, even more scrums, live scrums. Is that the same in Ulster? Is that do they scrum a lot more with the scrumming machine in Ulster? So those are the kind of things that we probably would love to know, because it could contribute to that. Because I remember when, like I said, with the Kings, our forwards used to scrum, man. They used to scrum every split. They were doing live scrums, at least about even 10 to 15 live scrums after every split. So for me, the thing is, maybe when he went to Europe, they didn't do live scrums a lot. So that's why maybe that now we're starting to pick up those sort of injuries.
Yes, actually, that's a fair point, because I'm looking at our club. We've got a head coach from Scotland. Wednesdays is live scrums. Monday, maybe machine. We use a bit of the machine. Wednesdays, live scrums and a bit of contact. And then Fridays is, team run. So, I think that's also maybe another big factor, because in SA you really do a lot of live scrumming, and a lot of forward coaches don't believe in scrumming machines. Yeah, scrumming machines are great for technique, and obviously the balance or holding your body weight, but live scrums are the real deal, basically. And if you don't have a lot of that, you can't really get that muscle memory to adjust and obviously get your body to be used to hitting humans instead of hitting pads. There's a massive difference in that regard and in that space. Yeah, talking about the team, Rassi had already spoken about the team that will travel to Argentina, or the team that will play Argentina is already training on its own. But then I want you to just maybe give me a glimpse of what the starting lineup would look like for Springboks going into that first game next week, Saturday, Vickers.
Yeah, I think. I think for me, I would love to see a guy like is it Vessels started one at Lucid Prop. I think Marks obviously will probably start at hooker. You got then you get I think the tight heads, it's a Koch there. I would really give another go to Morat at 4, and Nokia at 5. Obviously, Sia will be there 6, 7. 7 probably go Ulrich low. Then 8 probably Jasper Visa. I think if you look at the backs, Jaden, 9, 10, I'd give Manny Lebok a chance at 10. 12, 11, obviously Mapimpi, 12 Lucania, 13 Creel, Moody 14, and probably Moody 13 actually, because you got Irons as well, and then you can obviously get Fussy at fullback. Yeah, I think that would be nice. And then I would put Sasha at 23, just to give him a run, not to continue his.
They're resting him, Sasha. He's not traveling.
He didn't travel.
Nope.
Oh, I thought he traveled. Oh, so it's probably be Pollard and Vili there.
So your fly-offs are Mani and Andre, and then centers Lucanio and Jesse Creel.
No,
Your
I'm
outside backs, you've got
okay.
ALA, Apelele, Makazole, and then they put utility as Kanan Moody.
I'll go Kanan at 13, Lucania and Kanan at 13. That would be actually a nice and exciting backline.
Yeah, they've left a bit of experience out in South Africa for this particular game, because without Vili, who's the orchestrator or who's the person that's leading that backline? Is it Andre Pollard? Is it Is it Creel? Is it Kurtley Aronson? Who's leading that backline, Jade?
It's definitely Andre.
But then from the back, tough questions, because Argentina will be asking a lot of questions on attack and defense. So who's the leader? Because we know Vili, when Vili's there, he's the orchestrator. He's the one running things. He's the one who's talking to players where to be. So Andre needs to be doubling up then, up front on attack and at backline. Or does Mani start and then Andre off the bench?
Mani starts. I think what he'll do is he'll give. He won't change it too much in terms of. He'll still keep, his bomb squad more or less the same. But I think we will see maybe an Hendrik Vessel starting, and then maybe he'll give Malcolm Marx a start, and with Vincent Koch or with Thomas Toy. I think Itzebeth will play about 60 minutes or so until the game is wrapped up, and then he'll take him off. Nokia will start with him. Maybe he'll give Salman another run. But Lucy's definitely Sia. I think you'll give Ben Jason Dixon another go. I mean, you'll back him. And that's what Rassi does. He does back you. He won't just throw you, after that game against Ellis Park. You'll give him you'll give him another chance to rectify himself, and then Jasper again. At the back, Jaden at 9, he'll start. Willapop will start. Lacanio and Grill, and then obviously you'll give Kirtley a go because Kirtley was out last week, so maybe you'll see Pimpy and Kirtley and Fussy at the back. But definitely, he'll try and keep the core together, and then having that bomb squad again to come on, you'll see it from that aspect. I don't think he'll chop and change and experiment too much. He'll have, he has his certain standards and structure that he wants to play, and there's certain guys that identify that know their role in this team, 30, 40 minutes coming on from the bench, and he'll keep it like that. He won't really change and give them a start or so, because those guys are really like Wacha, and those guys really game changers from the bench. So he'll keep it like that. They know their role. They know they're not the worst. They're not the best flank. They know that that's their specific role in the team. So I think he'll keep it like that. I would like to see Nicholas Jansen van Rensburg get a gig off the bench to see what it's all about. I think this is a perfect chance to see what it's all about. So yeah. He's the one I'd like to see, a change I'd like to see from the bench or so, just to see what it's all about.
I don't know, man. I'm looking at the squad and I'm like, if I'm Argentina, I'm licking my lips playing at home, surely. Honestly. Because there's no, I don't know, that fear that was probably there against the All Blacks. But now I'm looking at the squad. I mean, if you remove Itzebeth, if you remove Kolisi, this forward pack is not really threatening, but I know it's Springboks and Rassi demands a lot out of these players. But I mean, if you remove Itzebeth and Kolisi, I don't know what's there after that. I mean, you've got Nicholas Jansen van Rensburg, you've got Ruan Nokia, you've got Salman Murat, you've got BJD, you've got Alder Glo, you've got Marco van Staden. I mean, come on, Argentina. Surely this is your opportunity to actually put yourselves in a very good position to challenge the Springbok team, right? I don't know, Hugh. What are your thoughts?
I think the Springboks will play better against Argentina than they played against the All Blacks. I think the Springboks got in their own head against the All Blacks and they didn't play to their potential. I mean, what would we rate those two Springbok performances against the All Blacks? 7 out of 10? I think there's room to go. So I'm
7 is generous. I think below 7. Honestly, I think below 7.
Yeah. So I don't think it. I don't think the personnel is going to be an issue against Argentina, personally.
All right, fair enough. But gents, unfortunately, I think our time is up for this particular segment because, there was also one topic I wanted to start talking about later, but maybe we can bring that one next week for another conversation. But for this particular segment for today, gents, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I would like to thank all our listeners who've tuned in. Always awesome to have this chat with you guys and listening in as well. But most importantly as well, thanks to the panel, Vuyo Zanga, former Blitzpoker, Hugh Griffin, the stats man. You can follow these guys on Twitter. Jade Craig, the weatherman. I think that's stuck now, Jade. Forget about changing this weatherman.
I'll allow it.
Allow it. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you for taking time to chill with us this Sunday morning. The breakfast scoop. But next week, we're back with the dinner scoop, lunch scoop. But yeah. All right, guys, have a wonderful Sunday. Have a wonderful week. Thank you for tuning in to the Rugby Scoop Pod. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.